it's Jasmine and welcome back to another language video. I hope you're doing very well today. So lately I've been getting a lot of requests to do another how I'm learning Chinese video, and in the past I have made one, but that was a long time ago and some things have definitely changed. Today's video is going to be mainly focused on how I'm currently learning Chinese and how I'm trying to improve as someone who's already fluent and just trying to take that extra step to become next level fluent. So basically at the moment I'm just trying to learn lots of new and complex phrases, so that is what I'm going to be explaining today, and also giving you guys some tips as well, tips for beginners and just a whole bunch of information. So get ready and let's go. So firstly, I think it's very important that I first mention that everyone learns differently, and in fact there are 4 main types of learners. So there is audio, kinesthetic, visual and reading/writing learners. So my methods may not necessarily be the most efficient for you, but you can of course definitely try them out. All I'm here for is to give you guidance, give you help, give you new ideas, and it's all about experimenting, taking your time and really doing what you think works best for you. And also, I'm not sure if you guys have watched my previous video before, but I do think it's still important for me to mention that I have been able to speak Chinese Mandarin ever since I could talk basically. So I haven't really experienced the beginner stage of learning Chinese since I could speak it as a kid, but I will try my very best still to give you guidance because I have been a beginner in Korean, Indonesian and other languages. So okay, that is enough talking and let's get straight into it. Firstly, for practicing my listening skills, I just watched a whole variety of different Chinese TV shows. I really enjoy watching them in my spare time, so what I like to do is that on YouTube, I just like to subscribe to a whole different bunch of Chinese channels. And yeah, some of my favourite shows to watch include Happy Camp, Informal Talks, If You Are The One, and also sometimes I'll see some short movies on my YouTube recommendations. For some reason they just pop up, so I watch them as well. So really, I just watch TV shows to practice my listening. As for practicing speaking, well, of course, because I'm half Chinese and everyone in my family, including my dad, can speak Chinese Mandarin, so that is how I practice speaking Chinese. But also I do speak it to myself as well sometimes, and that is a method that I actually use for every single language I learn, and I just find it really helpful. Now for practicing writing, there are a whole bunch of resources that I use, and firstly I think I'm just going to go through the most important one, and that is dictionaries. So dictionaries are of course very important when it comes to language learning. They're super helpful and always use them to the best of your ability. So I use 2 main dictionaries. The first one is an app, it's called Pleco, and I've been using this for a long time. It is just so great because they have example sentences and also they go through the characters really precisely, so I highly recommend this app and it is free. The other dictionary that I use is this Concise Chinese Dictionary by Title. I really like this because not only is there the Chinese side, but there's also the English side as well. I use this when I study Chinese in school. It's so cute as well. I also use textbooks to practice my writing, and currently I'm using the Contemporary Chinese Revised Edition number 4, and this was actually part of my uni because I was studying Chinese in uni, so I use these textbooks and I'm still using them because I really like it and I haven't finished going through them yet. So I have the exercise book and the textbook, and I also find these textbooks just right for my current level of Chinese. Now the next thing that I use to practice my writing is my notebook, and this is my treasure for writing. I just practice all of my writing in here. So the main thing that I do inside my notebook is that I write down new or complex Chinese phrases that I want to learn or improve on, and next to that I also write the English translation, and if I can't read the Chinese character I'll also add in the pinyin as well so it can help me pronounce it, and also I'll always write an example sentence using that phrase inside the sentence so I know how I can use it. Also, all of the notes that I take inside of my notebook are based on my Contemporary Chinese textbook. I also do some translation exercises in both Chinese and English, and I also do some writing exercises as well. So for example, this exercise was an advertisement or a zhaoping that I had to make up and write, and this was again based on a question taken from the textbook. Another thing that I do in my notebook, which isn't actually related to my textbook at all, I've always been doing this, and that is making vocab vocab pages at the back end of my book. So for example, I have a vocab page here for physical description, so I just write down a lot of Chinese words that are related to physical descriptions. I also have a bunch of words and phrases for characteristics or personality, the hardest to recognize Chinese characters. I have a page dedicated to describing words. I also have a page for recognizing Chinese numbers because it can be quite confusing if you're not really used to it, and I definitely still get a bit confused sometimes, but this page really helps. I also made a page on the family tree because again it can be quite confusing in Chinese, and also a page for foods. So that is basically what I do inside my notebook for writing, and I also have some more resources I use for writing because I feel like for me that is the area I always need to improve in the most. But yeah, the more you practice, the better you get. So I have here some calligraphy pads. So yes, I do Chinese calligraphy. I absolutely love it. So as you can see, this is one that I've filled in already, and it just has the Chinese character on one page here, and then you get a little practice sheet where you write on top in calligraphy ink, so you can practice writing them in the correct form. And I find these really helpful to act as a guide when you practice calligraphy or writing. And here is another one that I filled out before, and here I have another one. This one I haven't filled out yet, but it's still the same. They just have Chinese characters and you just fill them on top, so you trace them. Okay, so that was a lot of info there, and now moving on to reading. I like to read Chinese books. So some Chinese books I like to read are, for example, this one is called The Story of Mankind, or 人类的故事. So inside there's both Chinese and English next to each other, so it's really nice to read the Chinese and have the English as translation in case I don't understand any of the Chinese characters. I also have a comedy book in Chinese, and this is just a bunch of stories written by people, and it's really funny, and again because I really enjoy it, I find that I can learn a lot better. I also have quite a few kids books as well, and it's simple as well to follow. So one is this picture story book that I have, and this is one of my most favorite Chinese stories ever. And this is another example of a kids book. This is 365 Nights of Fairy Tale Stories or Legends. So inside it has not only the Chinese characters but the pinyin as well, and I really like this because it really helps if I don't know the Chinese character, although sometimes I do like reading books without any pinyin so I can challenge myself. So now I'm going to move on to some tips for learning Chinese, and actually on my Insta story I asked you guys if you have any questions, and I got quite a few, so I just put them into categories. Firstly, a lot of you guys asked how to deal when the strokes are really confusing or too overwhelming, and I guess my biggest tip there is just to go slowly. And I know it can be very confusing, and in fact actually I forgot to mention this at the start, but I still find Chinese a little hard every now and then. It's not an easy language, that is for sure. It's very complex and very deep, and I'm always learning. Don't be too afraid of it, and just take your time, and most importantly, don't rush it. I also recommend using some strokes notepads. So for example, I have one here that my sister and I used as little kids. Inside it just goes through some characters with the strokes to emphasize and practice on, and you can write inside this, and it's just like an exercise book, so I highly recommend these types if you're struggling with the strokes. Another type is this sort of a notepad. This one is also focusing on strokes and characters, and except it has a really funky pen, so you can write on it but you can also rub it out. Also, I recommend you to learn the fundamental strokes first, and there are a lot of different strokes in Chinese, but there are the 6 fundamental ones, so learn those first and then move on to more complex ones. Another question I got a lot was how to practice the tones, because Chinese has lots of different tones, and for one word, if you pronounce it the wrong way, could have a totally different meaning. So again, my first tip is to take your time and don't rush it, because if you feel like you have to rush it and you place a lot of pressure on yourself, you're just giving yourself stress, and stress does not help with study at all, trust me. And to help myself with learning the tones, I remember that I just memorized the tones in my head and the sounding of them. I just remembered Now I know it looks really funny me doing that right now, but it has really worked and really helped me. So try to memorize that sounding in that order in your head. So I also got a lot of questions as to how to start as a beginner and any tips. Firstly, I would say if you can, enroll into a class. This could be physical or even online. Classes really do help and they can really give you a great foundation for beginning a language. You could do online lessons and you can also purchase textbooks online from beginners. Expose yourself as much as possible to Chinese. So watch Chinese shows, listen to the radio, talk to Chinese people if you want to, or go to Chinese restaurants, order in Chinese. Just expose yourself as much as possible whenever possible. And always remember to take one baby step at a time. Learning language can definitely seem very overwhelming. Trust me, you will get there one day. Language learning isn't a race or something you need to rush. Enjoy the process. So another question is how I memorize vocab, because I know that can definitely be one of the hardest parts of learning Chinese, as you can't just look at a character and pronounce it. You actually have to memorize how it's pronounced. So what I do is that in my notebook I just write out the character again and again. I just repeat writing it, but I really focus on that. I don't just do it mindlessly. I'm really mindful when I do it, and that way it just helps me. I don't know, that's just my way of learning vocab. Oh, another tip is that I also try to make connections. So let's just say, for example, I'm learning the word qing, and qing has to do with water, and in this character there are the 3 droplets. So I just remember that there are the 3 droplets in the character and I just remember it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but yeah, I just try to make connections. The last question is how I stay motivated to learn Chinese, and I'm not sure if you guys have realized, but I do actually have an ebook called How to Learn Any Language, which I will link up here somewhere and in the description box. Inside there I really talk a lot about how to stay motivated to learn any language. So you can apply this to Chinese, and I honestly wrote my heart and soul out into that section. So definitely check that out if you would like to. But I guess right now what I want to emphasize on is just being passionate. Really feel passionate about learning Chinese and enjoy the process. Don't feel stressed, don't rush. It's not a race, as I've mentioned. I find that if you really don't like something, if your heart isn't into it, I find it harder to do. So even if studying Chinese is something you are forced to or have to do, try to find joy inside it. And also, no matter what techniques you use to learn Chinese, whether you follow my methods or not, whether you have lots of textbooks or not, one of the most important things is having a positive and optimistic mindset. I also get messages such as Chinese is too hard, or I want to give up and I just can't do it. And really you need to have a positive and optimistic mindset. It is so important, and just as important as any technique you use and finding the right method for you. I really can't emphasize enough how important this is. There is just no point to be negative. The more negative you are, you're not gonna get anywhere. That's just the honest truth, and it just doesn't help. Tell yourself things such as, I can do this, or let's just go one step at a time, or even envision yourself being fluent in Chinese if that is your goal. Just believe in yourself and surround yourself with positive people in a positive environment. Ask for help, don't be afraid, and you can do it. Just trust and believe in yourself. Alright, so that is all I want to say for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it was a lot, and I really put in a lot of thought to this video, so I hope that you found it helpful. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll always try my best to reply. And yeah, so good luck if you're learning Chinese or any other language, and I will see you next time. 加油大家, bye!